Joan, welcome to Carers Corner.
Hi Michelle.
Thanks for making time today. We're here with Joan Sauers, the author of Forgetiquette, What to Do When Someone You Love Begins to Forget.
Well, my dad actually had dementia, but it was a very long, slow decline. And the really tricky thing was watching all the people around him be in complete denial. So he wasn't allowed to admit that he had a memory problem, but he used to admit it to me. Because I would call, because he was living in the States, and I would call once a week and I'd get on the phone with him and he'd say, "You'll have to forgive me, my memory is gone." And I'd say, "Dad, that's okay." And then 5 minutes later, he'd say, "By the way, you'll have to forgive me, my memory's gone." So that classic dementia thing of repeating things, which is very frustrating. But the awful thing was, whenever I would try to talk to my mom or my siblings about it, they were in total denial. I said, "I think Dad has a bit of dementia." And they were like, "Oh, no, he's just getting old, he's fine." So of course it was undiagnosed for a long time, and I thought that's why people need this book. Well, there's a lot of frustrating things. The whole thing is frustrating. First of all, there's the repetition, because you just think you're losing your mind when they ask you the same questions over and over again. And the temptation is to say, "No, remember, Dad, I just told you," but you can't, because memory isn't an act of will. So that's frustrating. The other frustrating thing, or one other frustrating thing, is just that they are actually, when you lose your memory, you lose your identity, because we are the sort of collection of our memories, of our life's narrative. And so what happens when people lose their memories is they forget who they are, and you can't relate to them the way you used to. So it's very frustrating. You want that person you loved to come back. You want them to magically reappear, but you lose them bit by bit. So that's really frustrating. Absolutely. I mean, I have to say, with both my father and my father-in-law, the brightest spots were always to do with music. And with my dad, he wouldn't remember who he was, where he was, what he was doing, but all I had to do was put a big set of headphones on him, plug them into YouTube, find some old Glenn Miller music or something from the 40s, and he knew all the words. He was transported back. It was like this incredible awakening. And of course, once you sort of open that little door, other memories come back. But I find music is it's like magical that way. My father-in-law was the same, and even towards the end, when he could not string a sentence together, I would put on a Frank Sinatra record, and he would be able to sing every lyric in the Cole Porter playlist without missing a beat. So it is amazing how music, and I don't know whether it's to do with the emotion or the rhythms, but there's something about music that will refresh a dementia sufferer. I didn't really get help, and this is the sad thing. Because my father was in America, and my siblings and my mom had the most day-to-day stuff to do with them, and they were in denial about it, I really couldn't get help. I had to sort of use my own resources and use my own common sense, which is why a lot of the book is just from trial and error, from personal experience. But I think here, my father-in-law that I was helping look after, who lived in Sydney, was, with him, it was less of a problem, and I could actually joke with him about it, and I would ask him questions about how to help him. What could he remember, what couldn't he remember? So a lot of my research was asking a dementia sufferer what he needed from me. But it was also just talking to a lot of friends and people I knew who had the experience of it with their parents, and it's just so common nowadays that I had no trouble just anecdotally researching what, could solve some problems. I wish that I knew that the best way to break down the stigma associated with dementia was by talking about it. And instead, what I did in those early days, as I mentioned, was I would tiptoe around my father, I would tiptoe around my mother and my siblings. I would allow them to be in denial. And I think nowadays, if someone I loved was showing signs of dementia, I would just round everyone up and say, okay, this is what's happening, and you have to face it. Because then they could have helped me, they could have helped him much earlier. And instead, everyone was so sort of afraid of the subject and nervous about it that help was a long time coming. I think one of the most important things that people who are caring for dementia sufferers need to understand is that it is going to be the hardest thing they've ever done. It is going to be emotionally frustrating. They cannot do it alone. Whether you get help from a website, from friends, from doctors, from whoever you cannot do it alone. And you also have to forgive yourself when you get really pissed off sometimes. Because one of the most frustrating things about dementia is that the dementia sufferer will often fight the carer. They will often resist help. So all of these things are why carers need to be looked after just as much as the sufferer.